Welcome back, Red Spotters. Still sharing the Red Spotlight podcast. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Mr. Peter Martinez. And we're back here for our review of the 2021 version of Candyman, directed by Nia DaCosta, currently out in theaters right now. We just saw it, and we're here to talk about it, among other things that are captivating our minds and imagination right now, here on Red Spotlight number 345. How are you doing today, Peter?
Well, you know, I'm alive.
Yeah. Before we get into the
That's
review, we got some things to, we have some lingering feelings, or at least I have some things I want to get off my chest. First and foremost, what's most important? R.I.P. Ed
Agents
Asner.
of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, okay.
Ed Asner passed away at the age of 91 over the weekend, and yeah, it was sad to hear. He was so, I don't know, I mean, he was still so vigilant to the end. Still acting, you know, he hadn't retired, he was still doing a lot of stuff. And it really did feel sudden because, you know, just the past week he had the Hollywood Reporter did a major spread on him. He was very active on social media and everything. Like he's just a good guy too. And it was actually just really sad to hear about him passing away. He was one of the good ones, that's for sure. And some of the tweets that I've seen from people about, you know, their own personal experiences with him has been really heartwarming to see. And sad that he's gone. It's rare that you feel sad for a 91-year-old passing away, but it almost feels like he should have been around for at least 10 more years.
Fuck it, 20. He's that great. He really is, like you said, one of the good ones. Think about this. He lived to 91. Every story about him just made me love him more.
Yeah,
right?
every single one.
Every interview, every clip, everything. All the work he did, obviously. He was a great actor. To live that long, right? That fucking long. And everything I see of you just makes me love you more. Like, wow. Like, what an incredible person. Yeah. And I'm the kind of person, like, if you hit 80, you did it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's how I feel, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hit 80, like, holy shit, you lived a life. Everything after that is fucking gravy, you know? It's all extra and it's awesome. So for me, it's hard to be too sad.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of the celebration of, like, you did it, you know, and I'm happy you were around for so long. So yeah, here's one to Ed Asner, one of the good ones.
Absolutely. R.I.P. And I think one of his final performances will be, interestingly enough, as Carl Fredricksen when he comes back for the I think a Doug's Days short on Disney Plus.
Is that like a whole show, or
it's more like a collection of shorts, I feel.
But is the collection of shorts specifically about Doug?
But Carl Fredricksen is in the short, I think.
See,
Yeah.
a lot of these Disney Plus shows feel like YouTube channel shit. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean that. Yeah.
I don't got nothing against that, but yeah, I don't know. I'll probably. I love Up. Up. If you know me, I am an Up supremacist.
Oh my god.
I love it so much.
It's arguably one of the best. No, it's arguably the best Pixar film.
Yeah, I would argue. In that case. And the person I'd probably be arguing with would be Alexis.
And David Moreno.
Yeah. I don't know why I wanted to say Romero. Fuck. I'm so bad at names. The part of my brain that works with names just doesn't function. I don't know why. Ugh.
So there is that. Moving on to something more interesting here. Just things that I want to get off my chest. So Chris Evans and Scarlett Johansson are going to be in a movie together on Apple TV Plus. It's going to be directed by Dexter Fletcher, and they're supposed to be lovers. And I, for one, have been waiting for this since 2014. So bring it on. It's about time. So this is particularly exciting in a number of different areas.
Yeah, you and a lot of Stan Twitter accounts.
Absolutely. Interesting. It also is good to see Scarlett getting pretty big projects in the immediate aftermath of her launching a lawsuit against arguably the biggest entity in the entire entertainment industry. To
be fair, though, she had a big in because what's his name?
Well, Chris Evans is producing it.
Chris Evans. Starring.
Yeah, sure. It's the second one after the Wes Anderson movie, and he's not involved in that one, I feel.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah. No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it's her second major project, and now it's after. Technically, it's the third major project, but the first project post Marvel was that Tower of Terror movie she was producing with Disney, and that's been canceled for obvious reasons.
Yeah. I would not hold my breath for a Black Widow 2 either.
That wasn't going to happen either way, at least not with her. Even if a Black Widow 2 was happening, she wasn't going to come back for that.
How crazy would it be if tomorrow they're like, Black Widow 2 starring, what's her name? Her fake sister.
Florence Pugh.
How crazy would that be? The internet would explode.
The shade.
Right? Oh my god. I would love it.
The pettiness. I mean, just...
It would be fucking hilarious.
I mean, there's nothing that stops them from announcing that.
They're not going to do it just because of the blowback. Plus, it's not like it made a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's why they're having this whole lawsuit.
Yeah.
It's they got plenty of other properties that they can squeeze out. But yeah, okay. But yeah, good for her.
Yeah, it's good to see her career hasn't been derailed by this, because I think in other times it probably would have. Other stars anyway. Mm-hmm. Their careers would have been derailed because of something like this. So there is that. What else do I have here? Oh, I want to clarify something. When I said last week, when you and I were on the show, that I said that the team of S.H.I.E.L.D. had won a bronze award for Best Visual Effects at the Australian television circuit. Evidently, I left out some information. This was the first international win for Fuse FX, which was the effects studio that facilitated the VFX work for the show. So I want to also extend that level of international recognition to it. So, again, this is the stuff I want to talk about and should be mentioned, but no one else would. So here I am.
It's definitely a news story for one.
All right. So, next we have the reaction to the trailer for No Way Home. We talked about it at length last week, and we also discussed some of the potential leaks. And what's really been interesting is to see the reaction from people regarding the trailer. Although a tweet I think summed it up quite well in terms of how the world thought of the trailer and ultimately the movie, and that is from Parks Harmon, that said, "I don't even need this movie to be well written or thematically deep. You put Toby, Andrew, and their entire rogues gallery on screen at the same time, and I'm fucking sold." Yeah. And I can't think of a better summarization of how people ultimately will feel about the movie.
Yeah. You're gonna get those shots. You're gonna get those clips. You're gonna get those screen grabs of all the villains together, of the 3 Spider-Man working together, fighting the villains. You know, you're probably gonna get a long shot of that, and it's the second that exists, anything that happened prior to that film will instantly be forgotten. It won't matter. It could be a man on the toilet for like an hour and a half, but once it hits those moments, people are going to be crying in the aisles. Which, I mean, I think this really speaks to the insane love of Spider-Man, that it already got more views
than Endgame.
The trailer than Endgame.
But let's be real here. In particular, Spider-Man 2. A lot of people, I mean, I would say in particular Spider-Man 2, because you've seen so many people come out of the woodwork all of a sudden praising these characters and how great it is to see them back. And it's like, wow, maybe you should talk about how great Spider-Man 2 is more often. And I mean, while I feel The Dark Knight is among the best films in this genre, people saying The Dark Knight is the best film in this genre is so overdone. People even say Logan, but like, hey, hold a minute. Wait a minute. Even Spider-Verse, sure. But Spider-Man 2, that's the oldest of these films. And it's still among the very best. Can I tell you what I think it is? I think a lot of people remember loving Spider-Man 2. It was remembered as the best. But I think a lot of people abandoned those films a long time ago. That's true.
I think they abandoned them when they moved on to the Amazing films. And then once he hit the MCU, there was no looking back, right? But then with this trailer, a lot of people are like, fuck, like let me go look back, right? Like the characters are going to appear again. Like, let me take another look back at these films. And I think a lot of people are waking up like, fuck, it wasn't nostalgia. These things are great.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people just sort of went like, they're not that great. It was nostalgia, right? A lot of people just sort of threw their hand and kind of forgot those films. But I think this trailer didn't force people, but it made them want to go back and re-examine that film. And maybe even as a whole, those Sam Raimi films. Because Green Goblin's in there too. And I think it made them want to go back, see that first film. Green Goblin's in there too, like I just said, and the Sandman's going to be in there, which they haven't fully revealed, but he will be in there. And once that's more evident, which I think will be in future trailers, people are going to want to go back and re-examine the whole Raimi trilogy. And I'm loving the love it's getting, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, that's the part that's that we can love. Although it is interesting at the same time too, though, if there's a bone to pick with anything, is all of this for basically ripping off Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And when you think about the fact that movie was a modest success at the box office, but just because this will be in live action, man, how successful this thing is going to be so unbelievably crazy. So
it's oh god, this will hit $1 billion. You could release it today and it would hit $1 billion. That's for damn sure. No, this is going to be huge.
I also wanted to share a thread that I found really interesting. I shared it on the chat. As usual, things that I sent have no discussion. It seems like okay. Fine.
I send the best fucking memes the internet can provide.
Memes do not generate discussions.
They crickets from you people.
Oh, God.
Fuck off.
What am I supposed to react? Okay, yeah, it's funny. Sure, there's nothing to say more than that.
I don't know. A little gratitude, little praise for brightening up your day. I don't know.
Anyway, this tweet thread that started from DJ Wooldridge, that's his Twitter, or hashtag DJ Talks Trash. Interesting Twitter handle. And then this was the conversation, how it started, right? So this is what he says. I think the MCU Spider-Man could really benefit from a Disney Plus show. For one, Spidey has one of the best supporting casts in comics. A show would allow that to breathe. It would also let the recent movies be what they are. Inconsequential team-ups without feeling like a waste. Like, what is Zendaya's life outside of Peter? What motivates her? What about Aunt May? Hell, what motivates Peter in this universe? No Way Home seems to want to engage with Peter's double life, but we have to see him struggle with that at all in the previous, but in the MCU movies. The reason Spidey means so much to so many isn't his powers or costume. It's his struggles with personal responsibility and his relationships. When you sacrifice characterization and themes for generic spectacle, like too many blockbusters do, it makes the final product disposable. The first Raimi Spidey flick had a huge impact on adolescent me because I related with Peter's struggles with responsibility on the verge of adulthood. I don't know who this kid is with the billionaire benefactor and no relationship troubles, but I sure don't relate to him. Then comes in Hector Navarro, who I like quite a bit.
I love. Yeah. We love Hector. I think he's great. I was going to bring him up because I thought they had a really interesting back and forth. Yeah.
They did, and so I'm going to read the whole thing. So this is where he comes in saying, oh boy, you're wrong. Lol, Peter has been struggling with personal relationships since Homecoming, since having to decide between pursuing something like with Liz, the girl he really liked, or doing the right thing and preventing people from being hurt by Liz's dad. It's such a soap. And then continuing that in Far From Home with struggling to be a normal kid, trying to flirt with MJ and dealing with Nick Fury's world-ending bullshit, and then being betrayed by his mentor / superhero replacement, Quentin, Peter keeps trying work / life balance and failing. I don't think either of those two movies were disposable, and I don't think they didn't have any characterization. I think people are too nostalgic on the great Raimi films, and the aloneness Spider-Man had there.
Those are fighting words. The nostalgia part.
They don't like MCU Peter being connected to the Marvel world. And I also think Homecoming and Far From Home would have been very different and more important villains and differently received if they were the first live-action Spidey films and not the 6th and 7th. And then DJ Wooldridge comes back in here with his response saying, I totally get what you're saying. Most of the stuff you mentioned feels more plot-related to me instead of coming from character or theme. And I like having Spidey be part of a larger MCU. I just feel the wider Marvel connection steamrolls over the more human stuff. I'm thinking of the ups and downs of MJ's acting career, him referencing back to the older movies, the maternal wisdom Aunt May provides Peter, even Harry's jealousy and resentment. The Raimi films are not perfect, but these are all character-driven, human elements that the recent movies seem to have less interest in. I don't hate Homecoming or Far From Home. They're a lot of fun and the cast is great, but I can't shake the feeling that there are way better movies waiting there, hiding under the surface. Spider-Verse doesn't need to be an outlier. I think they should strive for that greatness. Then Hector comes back with, I love the idea of giving this cast a Disney Plus show because, as we've seen, it's worked really well in developing various previous supporting characters like Wanda and Vision and Sam and Bucky and Loki. So yes, I would also love to see more of Zendaya, MJ, Marissa Tomei's May. And then Wooldridge was right. Obviously, there are so many hurdles, but these started as serialized stories, and Spidey has so many great characters, supporting villains, etc., that I would definitely watch a Midtown High show. So that's, for me, that was one of the more fascinating back and forths I've seen on Twitter in quite some time. And a lot of the things, personally, I see the things that Hector pushes back on, but I feel like I'm entirely on Wooldridge's side of things. Like, everything he's saying, I echo 100%. For sure, really.
Right. But I thought that was a really good
back and
conversation. Yeah, right. Like, I thought Hector brought up a lot of really good points. And I will say, Homecoming, I think, did that the best of the new Spider films. That's why I still think it's out of Homecoming and Far From Home, I like Homecoming better. There are more moments of that where it's like, they did more interesting stuff with Homecoming. But man, I not even seen the whole films, but just going back and watching clips from the Raimi films, even me who's seen those films fucking million times, I'm just reminded, like, fuck, these character moments are incredible. Like, incredible. The relationship that Peter has with Aunt May, specifically in Spider-Man 2, when he tells her the reality of Uncle Ben's death, right? And the way she reacts, and then the way she forgives him. and the speech that she tells him. Like these character moments are incredible. And you do, in the new Spider-Man films, you do have him trying to be a regular kid, right? You, for sure, I think you see that in Homecoming, and you see it again where he's like, I just want to be a regular kid, and, you know, start a relationship with MJ, but, you know, Nick Fury's on my ass. But it's all very light, and I just have little to no emotional connection to it.
Right.
Because I don't buy his love with MJ, because not only did it literally come out of nowhere, it's just not developed. I don't know.
How could you feel anything if it's not developed?
Yeah. And that's kind of the crux of it, right? If I desperately want to see these two be together, then that drama kind of comes more. And I think what also hurts it is from Homecoming, you can tell that MJ likes him, right?
Yeah.
And it's Peter who's oblivious to that. So it never made sense to me why you started the film with Peter desperately in love with her, because the tension's out the window. Because you already know that she loves him, right? With Mary Jane, like, you tell there's they have a connection, right? But there's no understanding of like, oh yes, she's just waiting for Peter to sweep her off her feet. Even that first film, like there's great relationship stuff between them. Like when she comes and talks to him about Spider-Man, when Aunt May's in the hospital, right? And they have that conversation.
Yeah.
The way she's the girl next door, and they talk to each other every time they go and throw out the trash. And I don't know, to me, you see it built up, right? Even though he starts the film already in love with Mary Jane, he has been his whole life. Like, you see their relationship build up to where it comes to the end. You want them to be together.
Yeah.
Whereas here, they got chemistry, but that's about it. Like,
yeah.
So,
which is also what Garfield and Stone had.
Yes, and I know a lot of people love their relationship too. I never did. I really don't like those Amazing Spider-Man films.
Just an interesting aside for a bit? Mm-hmm. What is it with these Spider-Man films and these like fictional couples ending up being actual couples with the actors themselves? What is there? Is there a spell going on here?
It's the magic, right? It's the magic of Spider-Man. But no, right? So I actually don't disagree with all the points that Mr. Navarro brought up.
Right. Yeah.
I think they're correct. They're just so much weaker in comparison to
the Raimi
films. And then when you add on top of that the action, which is infinitely better in the Raimi films, the way it's shot, which is infinitely better in the Raimi films, the score, which is like when you just add everything on top of each other, mm-hmm. it becomes hard to look at the new ones and be like, and just not want more for them, you know?
Right.
And speaking of which, I guess we should talk about this trailer, which I didn't even realize until it came out. The last podcast we did, we discussed it when it was still the leaked trailer, but then the new trailer came out the day after, and then we released the podcast. So we were a little late.
I feel like, I realized that myself, but it was the same thing. There really wasn't anything new.
It was literally the same thing.
So I feel like it was like it sufficed. And I also recall that in the episode, last week's episode, I did say that, by the way, this trailer will drop imminently. So I think we fully expected the trailer to drop. Before the episode that we were even doing at that week was going to be released. So like we saw it coming, and it was, I think, more or less going to be the exact same conversation. Mm-hmm. So.
But I did want to add something. After having watched the trailer and gone back and just, gotten that Raimi Spider-Man nostalgia, I've been watching a lot of the clips. I haven't had time to like see the film as a whole. Just clips here and there on YouTube of Doc Ock and some of my favorite scenes from the film. I'm a little, well, not a little, a lot of worried, obviously, if you heard what I had to say about how I felt about the trailer last week. But one of the big things that I'm thinking about now is Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus. Why was it so good, right? Like, why do we love his villain so well? And a big chunk of that has to do with his relationship to Peter in that film, right? The way that he represents at the beginning of the film everything that he wants: a loving relationship, a successful scientific career, a good person. And at the same time that he's failing on every front, he sees the success of Dr. Octavius, and it's this connection, this through line that leads throughout the entire film about responsibility and sacrifice and all of that. And that's really what made Doc Ock such a fantastic villain. Are you going to have any of that in the new film? Or is he just going to show up and be, I'm Dr. Octopus? Right?
I think what you brought up last week, it didn't really hit home at that point. But after hearing others describe or kind of question about how these characters that were, out of Raimi's world, how, and done by Raimi himself, how they would act in the hands of a different creator.
Yeah.
And it would just act like differently. The comparison you made was Emperor Palpatine in The Rise of Skywalker. And you know what? It didn't really fully hit until others were talking about it. And then I remember, that was also a disappointment in and of itself. Wasn't just the fact that the Emperor was brought back needlessly in Episode 9, was that it didn't feel like him.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian McDiarmid was doing his damnness to make it feel like him, but the writing just really undercut everything. And it just became like, if I can't even get a kick out of Ian McDiarmid being the way I remember him being, what are we even doing here?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? That all goes to George Lucas. He directed the best goddamn Emperor, Revenge of the Sith. Right?
That's true. Yes, absolutely.
I always remember that shot where he's doing the lightning with Yoda, and he's coming up out of the back, because he had been shot back, and he's coming back up almost like a vampire. That's lifting up, and you see his smile, yes, like he does a good job with the Emperor, he really does. And in that film, it's fitting that he was a corpse, because that's how he felt, right? That's what the performance was. And it's not Ian McDiarmid, it's everything else around him. And yet when you think about how great Doc Ock is, I think about those puppet tentacles they had and how cool.
Yeah. And
the quick zooms, right? That amazing sequence in the hospital where they fucking murder all the doctors.
Oh yeah.
And just the in the screaming and the puppets going everywhere, and the snapshots of people, that's not going to be there.
No.
And it's the same thing for the Green Goblin.
Yeah.
So much of that performance and that character is Osborn's connection to Peter through
Toby's Peter, not
Toby's Peter,
not Holland's Peter.
Mm-hmm.
So it also brings the question: is the tension also then again removed with having these these Toby villains interact with Holland? It's
what's
but we don't know you, so what?
Oh my god, I just realized what they did. They fucking Iron Man'd their villains, right? Because it was the same. Think about it, right? With both Mysterio and fucking
Vulture.
The Vulture. It's we were wronged by Tony Stark, and now that quasi relates to you, so we're gonna take it out on you. And so now all these new villains are going to be we were wronged by this other Peter Parker, so now we're going to take it out on you. They can't stop doing it. It's the same fucking villain trope they've done with every single one of these films.
Yeah.
And they can't stop. And they're doing it again. Jesus.
Well, to me, even on top of all of that, I think what really resonated more with Wooldridge's rant, or not rant, but his thread there is the fact that the larger team-up and MCU spectacle stuff always seems to steamroll the character stuff, which is what ultimately holds these movies back. And I can't help but feel, I think it's both a Marvelism, but it's also something that Sony would love to do, because it also, like, it's a backdoor pilot for the Sinister Six. I mean, basically, in and of itself, this could be a Sinister Six movie with all of these villains coming back. But, like, what I really loved about the trailer, at least the first half of it, was, oh, you had an actual story. You never seen that Peter Parker been exposed like this.
Yes.
And I would have loved that movie. But then you realize, oh, this is just what is needed to facilitate what's most important here, which is, the team-ups. Mm-hmm. We have Doctor Strange in here, and then also we can get the old villains back to the multiverse. Which is so much less interesting.
The only reason the whole Peter Parker as Spider-Man's identity is out there, the only reason that exists is so that you could get him to go to Doctor Strange and ask him to undo it, which starts off the real movie, right? And it's like, fuck, because think about it, the when it comes to these superhero movies, the best plots are the simplest of plots. Spider-Man 2 is literally just, life fucking sucks, it's too hard, I don't want to be Spider-Man anymore. That's it. Mm-hmm. That's the whole conflict. And then everything is just character work. All of it. Right? And look at Guardians. Look at the best MCU movie, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. The whole movie is just Ego found Peter.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Then everything is character. My new favorite comic book film that just came out, The Suicide Squad. Destroy Project Starfish. And all the shenanigans you get into along the way it's just it's character stuff. It's action, it's character stuff. You know, there might be, you know, shortcuts and you go down a different path than you have originally. Like, it's a winding path, but it's a very clear overarching path, right? Like, go destroy Project Starfish. That's it. That's our story. And here, what should have been the basic story to lay down all the groundwork is Peter Parker's identity is out there. Everyone knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. That's hook enough. Do you know how much awesome character stuff you could do with that when it pertains to, you know, I want to see big conversations between him and Aunt May, and him and Ned, and how that affects their relationship, or and him and what's her name, fucking MJ, and how they not just. I know they're gonna have a scene here or two where they talk and like, wow, this sucks that everyone knows. Yeah, jokey joke. Anyway, let's go see Doctor Strange. Like, I know that's gonna exist, and that's not good enough. Sorry, it's not good enough. Because I know it's all going to be swept under the rug the second that at the end of the first act, like maybe 30 minutes in, where the second we hit Doctor Strange, it's all going to be about multiversal shit, top to bottom.
And it kind of brings me, like, it's this thing that Marvel Studios in particular does. And before we move on to the review, since we did mention Double Toasted a lot in the To the Table episode of the original Candyman, I did, by the way, watch what you sent in the chat today, which was the review for Shang-Chi, at least their review for Shang-Chi.
Oh, yeah.
And what was kind of miraculous about it is how it's amazing how glowing the remarks or the comments were and then it just kind of takes a turn that I was like, oh crap.
No, yeah.
And it's kind of like where the movie starts off interesting and different, but then it always ends up going back to the exact same place.
That's Marvel. They always got to end in the safest place possible. They'll start out doing interesting stuff, but don't you dare end in an interesting point. So yeah, now I'm really worried about Shang-Chi. We're gonna watch it. I'm gonna have an open mind, very open, but like,
It'll be the most open mind you'll ever see.
it's beautiful, so huge, more open than you've ever seen in your whole life. Huge.
No, but nobody's
Huge.
mind is more open than mine.
No one. Motherfucker. So yeah, no, I'm starting to really get bummed about Marvel movies. Well, specifically Marvel movies.
But you know what?
Because I started to get a little hopeful for the future.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, though. I choose to view it. I agree with you. I'm in that exact same way, because when you put this together with Shang-Chi, No Way Home, and Black Widow, yes. On the other hand, though, and this is where I think my more optimistic side takes into consideration. Think about how much worse we would feel if it weren't for how great the TV shows ended up being.
Yeah, they delivered a lot of cool stuff. They're really good. Yeah.
Also, think how much worse the world would be if Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't exist. So always
not much, really.
No, not really, because they don't care it exists whatsoever.
It didn't affect the world at all. So how?
It didn't affect any world whatsoever.
Not even the multiverse.
No, not even the multiverse. Which is hilarious, because there was an exchange you and I had that I thought was quite humorous last week when you shared, I believe it was Mr. Willems tweeted out about how that he will never forgive Kevin Feige if the Sam Raimi directed Multiverse of Madness film ends up being as visually uninteresting as most of the Marvel films. Mm-hmm. And I agree, that's fair. But I just thought it was hilarious that in that same week, I was saying the exact same thing about something entirely different regarding the MCU. And a little bit of to pick up on the through line from last week, which is why I kept asking about this Matt Murdock being involved in the Spider-Man movie. And like, oh, he just is. He's just there. And that was just so offensive to me, because what do you mean he's just there? What do you mean he can be one of the rare few ones that was not at all in a Marvel Studios produced project, but he just ends up being put in there, and it just is the way that it is. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, here I am, and like, wait a minute, that doesn't sit right with me, and I am pissed about that.
By the way, I have to
and
say,
here I am, here I am clinging to. Like, I'm clinging to the small hope that perhaps my characters can be brought in via multiverse. That's what I'm clinging to. Whereas, on the other hand, this bitch can just, like, be welcomed in with open arms for a scene. And no explanation required whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And fuck you. That's where I stand.
I'd like to take this moment to say, Mr. Kevin Feige, you are a genius. You are brilliant. I love you. I think it was... You just spent
so much time talking about how that. No, excuse me. No. You just spent 40 minutes talking about how he was so flawed and how these movies have been ruined and that they're not anywhere near the heart of the older movies. So you just undercut completely all you're saying, and everybody understands that's listening that you're just saying these things to get under my skin.
I think it's fantastic,
and I'm not going to let you do that, and I'll just talk over you
because it's just not how we want things to be.
No. That's not at all how it is.
That's exactly how it is. And Thank you so much, Mr. Feige. You made the right decision when it comes to Daredevil, and I can't wait to see more other, how should we say, MCU adjacent characters make their official introductions into the MCU proper. No multiverse needed, which I do know is coming.
And I will say, David and I will be talking more about this on our next episode.
You will be talking, David will be tortured.
That's not necessarily true, man. You should have seen. You see, that's proof that you don't listen to our shows. David really went on a tangent last episode where I was just David. We're just talking about He-Man and the Masters in the Universe, not talking about S.H.I.E.L.D. and everything. But Clark Gregg has been given some really interesting interviews that could suggest certain things. We'll be talking about that as well as our favorite TV shows of the year 2020. So keep an eye out for that episode because, we're efficient. We can actually get that in a pretty good time. Whereas the top 10 movies, well, I ain't the one dropping the ball on that one. So
Lira.
That's where we are. I think you're right, Peter. Ultimately, it is disappointing how so many of these like would-be Marvel projects, had so much potential in terms of captivating our interest and imagination, then always end up in the same place. And you know what? As long as I get a Suicide Squad, as long as I get a WandaVision, as long as I get an Eternals, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Ultimately,
yeah. I am looking forward to the Batman.
That's true. We're getting that.
Mm-hmm.
We would have already gotten that if it weren't for this fucking pandemic.
Yep, 100%. Fucking shit.
Which, by the way, what the fuck is going on with that, right? Like, I want to get to Candyman so much, but a lot of these movies should be doing so much better, and we should have been already on the up and up if it wasn't for the resurgence of this pandemic, if it wasn't for these fucking anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers that will not let us move on from this. So many of these movies would be doing so much better at the box office. It would have been back. It was within grasp. And then here we are with this Delta variant that has been so
destructive. Yeah, no. It's these people, like we've said a million times, are part of the death cult. They don't care if I die. They don't care if you die. They don't care if they die, which is very scary. It's all about... I don't know what it's about. They're fucking insane.
Death?
I don't think they view it that way, though.
It's all about freedom.
I guess.
Their perceived notions of freedom. No, they don't care. They don't care if they die until they're actually about to die, and then they ask for the vaccine. Which, by the way, has happened many times, according to reports.
Yes, but I think a lot of them still are just like, I don't believe you. They die just saying, don't fuck you, basically, to the medical staff. I don't know. These people are fucking insane.
It's just so, like, it's annoying to me because I want the movies to be a sustainable business again, and it would be if it weren't for them, and they're affecting that, and that to me is like a holy place. Like, if you're affecting that, you're really messing with some bad juju, and then on top of that, I've been waiting so long to have, like, these big trips, and it just so happens that post-Labor Day, I got a month full of trips, and I'm just like, I should be at a place where I'm fully vaccinated. I shouldn't have to be as preoccupied with the pandemic, but now I have to be. Now I have to go and go to these parties and these trips with this in my mind now because of these anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers. Yeah, no,
they're dragging us down the pits of hell.
And depending with how good or bad Shang-Chi does. Excuse me, Shang-Chi, because apparently that's a big thing in the trailer. Do you see that trailer where they like Shang-Chi?
Where they're
Shang-Chi?
like Shang-Chi. So it's
Shang-Chi, bitch.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, Kevin Feige I've been saying it several times. It's Shang-Chi. You're the one that keeps saying Shang-Chi.
You said Chang-Chi.
For weeks, I've been saying Shang-Chi. Go back and look at the tapes.
You said Chang-Chi.
So as I was saying right now, a lot of the movies that we want to see this year, maybe they get pushed, and what happens to us then? What do we end up going back to square one?
Yeah.
What the fuck, man?
It's very hard for society to function when a good portion of them are just batshit fucking insane. I think we've always known it, but it's becoming more and more apparent every day, and I honestly don't know what to do about it.
Which is why, like, because of our reality, I take the good where I can get it, you know? So, what little good we can get. And look, we may be, like, down on a lot of it, but with all the stuff that we know, we still are such like Marvel bitches where like we want the films to be great. We want to be proven wrong, right? We want to be enchanted. We want to be blown away by them. Still.
Yes.
So there's that.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah. Well, watch other stuff like Candyman, which just came out in theaters.
Yes. Candyman. Did you know it was directed by Nia DaCosta?
Apparently, people don't know that reality. I keep seeing on film Twitter refer to it as Jordan Peele's Candyman. And many people, many in particular, a black critic alike, many in particular female black critics have been very vocal on a film Twitter about their disgust for the disrespect that Nia DaCosta, his name has been left off a lot of publications when they, in a lot of headlines in particular, when they refer to it, Candyman, and include Jordan Peele.
That is fair.
Yes.
That is very fair. Dare to say his name. Anthony.
Do it.
Antoni and his partner move into a loft in the now gentrified Cabrini. After a chance encounter with an old-timer exposes Anthony to the true story behind Candyman, he unknowingly opens a door to a complex past that unravels his own sanity and unleashes a terrifying wave of violence. Cast: Yahya Abdul-Mateen.
The second.
The second. Oh, they don't have the second here. Tiana Paris, Nathan Stewart Jarrett, Coleman Domingo, Kyle Kaminsky, and yeah. And of course directed by Nia DaCosta.
A great cast. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, you know him from the recent Watchmen, as well as I think he had a great minor role in the Trial of Chicago 7, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. He's a rising star here. Teyonah Parris we just saw in WandaVision. And with Coleman Domingo, he's in a lot of things, and he's always a great presence. I always appreciate, he's one of these actors that pops up in things left and right, and I always love to see him there.
I agree. I think he's great. He's another one of those actors where you see him and it's like, I don't know that guy's name, but I like him. I like that.
Yeah.
I like when he pops up.
I love his voice too.
Yes.
He's an amazing
distinct
presence. This is the feature debut for Nia DaCosta, am I correct? The feature film debut for her?
I think she made another film before, but it was like a very small film.
And just to be clear, for the credits, as we were talking about before, so Jordan Peele is producer on this, and he's also a co-screenwriter. DaCosta is director as well as co-screenwriter. So
I guess she had made a film called Little Woods.
We have Letterboxd, right? Like, you have access to her filmography.
Yeah,
you should see
it's
what she
only
did
one
before.
other called Little Woods that came out in 2018.
All right.
Which had starred Tessa Thompson and Lily James.
Interesting. So with that and this, and then she was hired to do a Marvel movie.
The Marvels.
Well in advance before the movie came out, the Marvels and everything. So, which will feature Teyonah Parris.
Well, that's Marvel's MO. They find a director that's done their first tiny film and snatch them away. Because they know they can make them do anything they want.
Unless you're a James Gunn or a Chloe Zhao?
Yes. There are exceptions, or Taika Waititi.
Yeah.
There are exceptions, but for the most part, they love to snatch those little unknown directors, because the real director is Kevin Feige. Let's be real.
Well, yeah. That is very much true. Man, you just unlocked a memory I had a few weeks ago when, oh my God, I don't know why I keep bringing up his name. He's such an asshole with the things that I like and everything. But with, I'm not even going to go there. It's just too much of a distraction. Anyway, DaCosta, the reimagining of Candyman, it is the spiritual successor, or the spiritual sequel, as they like to call him now, to the original film, similarly to how Halloween 2018 was to the Halloween 1977 film, where they ignore the sequels that came in between. In this case, there were only two, Candyman 2 and Candyman 3. Of course, I haven't seen them because I only just saw the original. So, did you ever see those?
No.
Okay. Did you hear anything about them?
They're not great. I think they take a more standard slasher
I see.
aspect to them. Which, I mean, that's not surprising. Well, although I think in the second one, which was Candyman Farewell to the Flesh, they have a whole flashback scene where they show you him turning in when they killed him and he turned into Candyman. I don't know. So there's that. Yeah. But yeah. Oh, and you know who directed the second Candyman film?
No.
Bill Condon.
No.
Yeah.
Huh. Bill Condon, who, if memory serves correctly, directed the recent live-action remake of Beauty and the Beast.
Yes.
And Dreamgirls, if I'm not mistaken?
Dreamgirls and Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 and 2.
That is an interesting filmography.
Yeah. Very interesting. So yeah. Candyman. How did you feel about the new and improved Candyman?
You know, I enjoyed my time very much so at the theater, and I, like you, when it all came to a conclusion, I was like, I liked it. It was a good time. And I feel overall it's a strong film, but it is curious to hear other people's perspectives on it, because I think the more we've gone on with the film being out, which really hasn't been all that long, but that being what it is, I think it's kind of polarizing. There are some people who really love the movie, and then there are some people who really dislike it. And I find when you have a situation like that to be quite interesting, because I genuinely liked it, but there were some things in there that at the time I didn't fully process for why they were there or what was going on. But I think overall, the gist of what I really ended up appreciating is that DaCosta really took this and kind of with a sledgehammer, just like, all right, this is my version of Candyman, and without ruffling too many feathers, kind of like, doing an NWA where it's like it's not fuck the police, but it's fuck white people. Or maybe in some cases, fuck the police.
I was going to say.
I just remembered, wait a minute, yeah, it could be fuck the police. There's a minor aside. I think the main critique that people have been pushing back on the film is that she was trying to do way too many social commentaries at once, and it doesn't all cleanly come together. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, because I myself am in this place where I'm kind of indecisive as to how I feel about that yet, because I didn't find the social commentaries to be a distraction or to be kind of messy. I thought they were pretty overt, and I appreciated that. In particular with some of the executions, literal executions as we see on screen. I think for me, if I enjoyed the film and I enjoyed the actors, but if there was anything that I enjoyed the least of, is the fact that while I did think the cast did come across as real people, they weren't really all that fleshed out, though I'm not really sure if they really needed to be all that fleshed out, with the exception of Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who, I think does a great job, but I can't help but doing that thing where I'm comparing him to Tony Todd, and it really isn't a comparison, kind of at all, And I think if there's a big drawback, if there's a big drawback, is that it's just not as grand of a presence as Todd's was. And while I do feel it's unfair to say that, but it's just, I wasn't that grabbed by his performance as Todd's. So I guess that's kind of my big issues. But as far as the political commentary is concerned, of course, I always appreciate that. And the ending, while horrifically violent, there was some heavy stuff at the very end of it, but I think the ending was as thrilling as the ending of The Invisible Man. I'll tell you that, where you kind of leave with it like this vengeful justice, if you want to call it. It's a really interesting combination where it's like, man, I didn't know I needed to see it, but it felt so good to see it. So I don't
worse
know, man.
than Candyman.
It's really interesting because there's also some play that that DaCosta does here with the mythology of it, where you could kind of argue, at least I kind of felt this way, where I know Coleman Domingo's character kind of like says these words, but you may even feel as if like DaCosta was trying to say this, at least how she feels the Legend of Candyman to be, but less so much of a villain and more of maybe of an anti-hero, of a necessary being, and kind of a meaningful presence for maybe a necessary evil that needs to happen that can create some commodity of justice for the African American community. I don't know. These are just things that kind of like occur to me as like that last act was swirling in. But overall, I don't think it's perfect. I don't think, to me, I don't think it's as good, clearly, as the original movie, but I still thought it was a very good movie. And I enjoyed myself. The one thing I will say, and I did mention this in my review, is that with horror fans, the big thing they want is scares. I don't know how many scares are going to get here. There is gore. There's plenty of gore, but I don't know how many scares are going to get here. And if you're that kind of horror fan, you may be less than enthused about it. But that's where I came at it.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can start off there. For a lot of people, they come into this and their whole they judge a horror film by, was I scared? And I've talked about this before. I don't. Right? I judge a horror film by how good it is. And horror films to me don't have to be scary to be good. They can be haunting. They could have an unsettling mood. They could, they could be a lot of things. They don't have to be just downright like, I'm fucking terrified, There's different levels to horror, I feel. And for me, I'm okay with not necessarily being like scared of the film, because I thought it had a very enchanting mood, a very not necessarily horrific, but sort of what's the word?
Haunting? Melodic?
I guess haunting is good.
Sure, yeah.
It
was a haunting atmosphere, and it made you feel what you wanted to feel out of a movie like this.
Yes, absolutely. I'll say I think Nia DaCosta did a fantastic job directing.
Oh,
it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I
Yes.
I think even people that aren't strong on the film are pretty upfront
unanimous in how much of a strong visual direction it had.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was great. There are kills in the film that I'm not in love as far as like, this is terrifying, like speaking to the horror, but I'm in love with how it's shot.
Yes.
Like when the art critic dies.
Oh,
so good.
Oh,
so
yes.
Haunting.
Yeah.
As you pull back and obviously you're not meant to be, I don't think you're meant to be terrified, but it is just creates this unsettling mood that I thought worked so well, right?
Yeah.
Like Nia DaCosta, I felt, came to play with this film.
Oh, yeah.
And I was impressed. I was like, okay. Like, I'm looking forward to other things she has going forward. I know the Marvels, we just had a whole discussion on Marvel and sort of the Lucy with the football situation that when it comes to Marvel films nowadays. But as a whole, as a director, I look forward to seeing her bright and blossoming career. I liked this film. I did.
Yeah.
I did. I know a lot of people feel it's too on the nose. Yes. But I feel we're in a time where shit needs to be on the nose. I feel like art,
and you've been consistent about that.
Yes.
You've said that about a great many of different like pieces where it's like, look, too on the nose. We're in a time that you need to beat it over the head, in particular with the messaging, because of how little is being done to address these issues. Nothing is being done to address any kind of issues that are not just particular to the African American community, which clearly a lot of them is imbued with the DNA of not just this film, but the franchise of it, right? But I mean, the reality is, whether it be something as big as climate change or as small as, registering more people to vote, there are just about every single political issue in existence when it comes to this country and the people that reside in it have so little progress being made. There is some progress. That is true. There may be even more progress depending on how the end of the year. Ask me how this year ends, and then we'll get back to reevaluating that. But that being said, whatever good is being done in any kind of area, it is just wholly inadequate with what the many crises that need to be addressed. And it feels like for no matter how good is done or how little progress is made, we always end up falling 5 steps back because of the crazies, because of the nutcases, because of the damn cultists and idiots out there that keep holding us back. That's
the big
one issue.
thing.
Yes.
But that's the big thing to me. People are as crazy as fucking ever.
Yeah.
So the art that you make is going to reflect that that extreme, right? It's sort of like when... How do you satirize Donald Trump, right? Like, I grew up watching Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, and I saw, the way they would satirize Bush and the Republican Party of the time. It's now to the point where I don't know how you satirize them without just, like making monkey noises and hitting yourself with a hammer in the head. Right, because that's the only way to get stupider from where they are at this point. And I feel if you're making art to reflect the world in which you're in right now, yeah, guess what? It's gonna be a lot more on the nose, because that's the times we live in. The times we live in are a lot less. I'll be honest. I think they're a lot less gray. I think it's a lot more evident who the crazies and who the bad people are. And I personally don't like that, but that's just the way it is. So yeah, art is gonna reflect that. Like, I'm sorry. And I know it might be less interesting to some people. And that's fair. I think that's very fair.
Sure.
But yeah. I think because for me, and also with you, because we try to be anyway, so plugged into the headlines of today and the world of today and everything that's going on across the globe, it resonates with me more when it's because I see the way things are, and I'm like, yeah, no, like, you need to be a little bit more upfront with the way of the world, unfortunately. So yeah, it works for me, but I understand how it doesn't work for a lot of other people. I'll say that.
I believe you're going to get to another point about...
Was I?
Your overall feelings on the movie. You liked it, and you get this part,
I liked it.
Yes.
I liked it. No, but I really did like it. I thought... This is the thing. Like I said, when it comes to the messaging and it being a little bit more blunter than the original, which, by the way, I just think it's a little bit more blunt than the original, because I think the original was pretty blunt as well. So the fact that it's...
Which you can hear that conversation on To the Table with Peter and me.
It's almost like we just recorded it. So yeah, the messaging, it does work for me. The messaging being a little blunter, I understand how it could negatively affect some people. For me, it still works. I still enjoy it. The direction, I think, by Nia DaCosta is fantastic. the acting, again, at the end of the day, it mostly relies on, what's his name? Mother effer. Yahya Abdul-Mati. Yeah. And I really like him. That's another one where it works for me. I really, really like him. And it's less so, unlike the first one, where that was really the presence of Tony Todd really carried that film. It doesn't here. It's more of a spiral down insanity with Yahya's character. Mm-hmm. Which I like. Yes, he doesn't have the presence of Tony Todd. I will admit that, but I think it's going for a different kind of film. It's not trying to be the first Candyman.
It's going for a different kind of Candyman in and of itself.
Yes, which I also want to bring that up. I really like the different twist they had on the whole Candyman story and just the whole mythology of Candyman. I really enjoyed that.
It ain't just one.
It ain't just one.
It ain't just one. It wasn't
the whole
only
damn
just
hive.
One. Yeah.
That worked for me. And I know a lot of people for a lot of people, Tony Todd is Candyman. So that might not work for them. Which, I mean, this film kind of, by the end, confirms, yes, he is Candyman. But there's just a wider, interesting mythology to it that I dug. I actually really, really liked how they did that. So overall, could it have been better? Yes. Mm-hmm. Was it a little too blunt at times? Even with me appreciating and enjoying the bluntness, yeah, I would still say in some sections, even for me, it was a little too blunt. Is Tony Todd sorely missed? Of course, until he isn't. But it's just a little taste of him as Candyman again. So ultimately, I actually did really, really like the film. A lot of the reasons why people dislike the film, I understand. I think a lot of them are valid. A lot of them, I think, come from... they don't come from a negative place. Because there are some people that are like, Candyman went woke.
Oh, God. Well, those are bad faith people.
Yeah, those are idiots. Like, I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about a lot of other people who seriously had issues with the film, and I think they...
What a brain-dead argument to make that Candyman went woke.
Candyman went woke. So stupid.
Oh, my God.
I know. But, there's an audience for it, clearly. But no, I think there's a lot of people who do have issues with the film that I think come from a really good place and bring up a lot of valid points. For me, for all the reasons that I stated, I think it just really worked for me.
It's interesting about how the whole mythology of it works because let's go ahead and get into the spoilers of it here. There's more than one Candyman, as you mentioned here, and there's a Candyman for every person. Just a couple of the observations that I made that were actually pretty interesting is that, having a lot of the events occurring after, or before technically, and then also after the events of the first Candyman, some of the different, I guess, dynamics you have in place from the first movie. Instead of having like the affluent white people and like the poor black people, you have affluent African Americans here with our main characters. With Yahya is this artist, a bougie artist, like one that I guess makes some money and has like is known, and they're in basically the Helen Lyle apartment.
Yeah,
it's a really nice apartment. I want that apartment. And it overlooked the city and everything. And there was some commentary in the discussion there about how gentrification has been updated, or the ugly face of gentrification has been updated, to where it's like now, as before, now it's been updated to where white people don't want to be reminded of the gentrification they did, so now they're tearing things down and pushing people outward. And I think look at what happened with Cabrini Green, where it's all but deserted now.
Yeah, it's basically dead. The old Cabrini Green, anyway.
Uh-huh.
Except for a few stragglers, a few of the old timers, as they say. What I really liked that this film touched on, and it is similar to the first film, is sort of the art world.
Yeah.
And it's similar, slightly different to the first one, where it was more of like educators. Yeah. But here it's the art world, where they sort of commodify
artists
abuse.
Oh, that
that the poor and the minorities feel, like these rich artists that live in these giant beautiful apartments will take a stroll down to the projects to get inspiration for their fancy art shows that they have to sell to rich white people who tell them whether they believe the pain feels real to them or not, in order for them to be put on display so other rich white people can pay millions to buy. And it's crazy. Yeah,
it's exactly what you think it is, because we have a sequence in the film where it's like, we're at one of these like exhibits and these parties, and it's all and like it's these people just standing around drinking wine, like, and trying to like, yes, I see what this means. You're trying to say this with this, and I'm like, I feel the pain that you felt when it's all this bullshit. Like, I mean, it's one of those snooty events that you just, when you see it.
The funniest thing to me was Yaya's character when he's talking to the curator. And
the curator? Or the critic?
The curator. In the beginning of the film, when he's first showing him art. And then he kind of hates it. And then he's like, well, I'm also going to do this other piece on Cabrini Green. And then he's like, wait, he's going to be like, oh yeah, like the struggle. And then he's like, oh yeah, and how terrible white people are. Like, that's great. And he's a white person. Yeah. But he knows it'll sell. Like, it's just sort of the absurdity of how it's sort of these things are
evolved
taken
into this. Yeah. It's very 2021.
Mm-hmm. And how it's so crazy how like, for me, the thing that really stands out is sort of the art critic, the really snotty, up her own ass art critic who really just destroys him when just shitting on his art to his face at the art gallery. But everything she's saying isn't wrong.
Yeah, that's interesting. Juxtaposition, right? Like,
yeah,
man, you're real. That's a real bitchy move to do. It's just like trash somebody to their face, but you ain't wrong either with what you're saying. Yeah, because it really did feel like a cheap, like, imitation of something, like that whole thing of like Yaya's character like reaching for something there. I'm like, it felt like somebody that was really trying to make, like, I don't know, something like trying to pull the diamonds out of like, I don't know, horse crap. Mm-hmm. It felt very fake in what he was trying to appropriate, if that's the right word usage there.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is, right? Like, he's going into these poor towns and these people, and he's not part of it. He doesn't understand it or know it,
right?
But he finds it interesting, right? Like, he's arguably just as bad as
Helen Lyle
from the first film.
Yeah,
but he's not a white woman. He's a black man as well. So I think that's interesting. In fact, it's the white woman that's pointing this out to him. But she also ended up to be like a real piece of shit. Like, I love how everyone hated his art and trashed it, but the second that there was murders in front of his exhibit, all of a sudden they're like, oh, we gave your art a second look, and it's very hot right now. It's very buzzing because of the murders. And the way that turns around, it's like, these motherfuckers.
I mean, it just reminds me of like it just reminds me of the bullshit that happens in any kind of oh man, here I am calling the kettle black.
Yeah.
Or here, but like,
because you're an elitist, yeah.
Well, it's like this is what happens with the press. Like it's not hot until it is, and all it took was people being viciously murdered for it to actually become relevant. And it's this game that the press and the media does all the time, where it's like you're focusing on the wrong things here and having the wrong takeaways. Like it really reminds me of the stupid, vapid, and disgusting coverage that's happening nonstop right now on cable news networks about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Not to derail this podcast into something else entirely, but that I think is a kind of indicative where it's like, if it really feels distasteful and like it's done in bad faith on the part of the what's motivating all of this.
The second the war ends, now you've started to give a shit about civilian deaths and even military deaths again, which you should have from the very beginning. And if you did from the very beginning and you as the press had done your job, then we never would have entered a 20-year war. All of that's very frustrating. But we're bringing
also kind of it is sickening in her delivery though in the movie. It's like it's also macabre. Like she's so interested in it now that people were fucking like murdered right by him, and it's like, and it's also really disgusting too. Also done to hilarious effect as well, but also just kind of like, what's wrong with you? When Yaya is like, like when he doesn't even give a shit that they were murdered, but he cares so much about how
it'll affect
that his work is getting attention.
Yeah, no. All that stuff, which is commentary in of itself, all that stuff I really enjoyed. I thought it was funny. I loved it. I thought it worked.
Yeah.
Again, a little blunt, maybe, but I think it worked. As we said, he's not as charismatic or is engaging as Todd, but Yaya I think does a really great performance. I agree, you don't know much about him,
right?
You have his general sort of need to succeed, similar to Helen in the first film. And the way that it's almost like they're punished for not showing reverence. It's sort of like the ultimate punishment for cultural appropriation.
I see. Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of like you didn't stop to try and truly understand. You just saw these people suffering as dollar signs. As status, right? And now this is your comeuppance for that. So for me that works, and sort of his emotional downward spiral, the way he's like fucking with his arm that's rotting away.
That was sickening.
That really got to me.
Ooh.
Especially because I'm kind of that person where it's like, oh, there's a scab.
Oh fuck!
And I just start picking at it. And I just want to rip it off, even if it like bleeds everywhere, and I hate it, and it's gross, but I can't stop myself from doing it. Like I'm that kind of person, right?
Oh god!
Where it's like I know I don't want to pick at it, but I'm kind of compelled to pick. So it was worse for me. Just looking at that.
It reminded me of Michael Shannon in The Shape of Water.
Yeah, fuck that. Oh, that was. He ripped it off. Okay. No. I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not like them, Sam. I am. But that stuff for me worked. When he's fucking losing his mind, painting. I thought it was so funny. Like when his wife checks up on him in the bathroom, and his response is just like,
he pushes her out
the
door.
Bye bye. It just slowly closes the door.
That was like.
No, I loved it. All that stuff is good. I like that. We talk about how, again, more blunt. Candyman as a character himself sort of was meant to represent generational black pain, and they sort of further that representation by making it that there are multiple Candymen, right? Like, and they all from different generations, and because the Candyman story that we learn here is about a guy from the 1970s, right? Not the 1890s, about how he had a hook for a hand, he passed out candy to the neighborhood kids. Razor blade showed up in a little white girl's candy, which, what was she fucking doing in Cabrini Green? How about that? But so they find the guy, torture him, kill him, and then that's the new Candyman. But to me, I think this works because it speaks to the cyclical nature of the violence that has permeated through Black culture. Since this country's inception, right?
Since ever. Yeah.
And the fact that there are still the fact that new Candymen are still able to be born speaks to the pain that still exists today. And the way that's true. Pain first felt in 1890 can reverberate through time.
In 2021.
Yes. Is it a little blunt? Yeah, but I think it works.
But again, I'm sure there are people who are listening that are like, what are you talking about, that things are still as bad for black people as they were in 1890? And people who think that way, that's why it needs to be over the top, because people don't understand. They don't know how bad it really is. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate that message coming through in such a great storytelling device like this.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Plus, it helps that it was told through those fantastic little puppets.
Yes.
I really like that visual device. Mm-hmm. And speaking of, the first time that we see them at the very beginning of the film, when we're retold the first Candyman, I really liked that. Because it was different, right? It was obviously, it was the story as it was passed down. You know what I mean? Which really speaks to the idea of how legends are created, how these stories survive. If you see the original movie, you know what's bullshit and what really happened. But if not, it just, I don't know, it's cool. I liked it. So yeah, I stuff that maybe wasn't that great. The movie really did just stop to just show some high schoolers get fucked up. It turned into a standard slasher for like 5 minutes and then just returned to the movie.
That did feel very out of place.
It's a little weird.
I mean, it's a good scene.
Yeah. It almost feels like they shot that scene first before they even had a script. And then they had a movie and they're like, oh wait, we shot that fucking scene, right? And we were going to work it into the movie somehow?
Or perhaps Universal was like, hey, we need more kills here to justify this. We need a kill,
yeah. We need a kill for the trailers.
Yeah, basically.
I guess you can kind of speak to it as like the legend continuing. And it is that sort of thing of, again, the ultimate revenge, not revenge. Revenge makes it sound weird. I don't think it's revenge. It's the ultimate
justice, comeuppance,
I guess.
Karma.
For cultural appropriation, right? Because it was this young girl. She was in the art gallery. She didn't give a shit about any of it. It was like, eh. But she took the culture. She took the story and shared it. Right?
Yeah.
And then what was the result? Candyman. So in that way, I can kind of see how it connects. You know what I mean? But yeah, it does kind of stick out from the rest of the film.
It does. What did you make of Teyonah Parris? Because you didn't her all that much in WandaVision.
I did not, and I stand by that. I think she sucked in Wonder. And I was gonna say Wonder.
Well,
Woman.
she sucked. That's a bit harsh.
She was bad. I'm sorry.
Really?
I didn't like her. Yeah, I did not like her in WandaVision.
Wow.
I
thought she was okay. I didn't think she was bad.
So many of her lines just felt so overacted.
Okay.
We need to be
That's fair.
the solution. And it's like, okay. Here, she was really good.
Mm-hmm.
I liked her. She didn't have much to do.
Right.
But with what little she gave, I really think she shined through. And I think she did a good job here. Which makes me hopeful that I'll really like her in the Marvels. Because it's Nia DaCosta going to direct it too. So before, I was kind of annoyed where it's like, okay, her character kind of just exists. Because it's part of whatever they're doing with the film, and they have to give her origin. They need to stick her origin somewhere, and I don't know. I just didn't get a good first impression of her character. But this now I'm like, I think I'm softer on it now. I'm kind of looking forward to see what Nia DaCosta does, because I thought she did good. I thought she did really good. Give me 1 second.
Oh boy. It seems like Mr. Martinez is being summoned, and I can only imagine, if I heard correctly, it was his cat that needed to be let in. Because animals can be ever so annoying. Right?
My cat gets claustrophobic after a while. So yeah, Teyonah Parris, good.
Have you considered making her a caddy door?
You know? It's not a bad idea. It's
the problem then, would she even use it?
It'd be tough to teach her. She doesn't like change. Yeah. Anyway, I would never be able to do it. Those are new fucking doors, so they wouldn't let me do that. Although maybe, I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other things I kind of had issues with.
Can we talk about Coleman Domingo and how great he was in this?
Yeah, I really like him.
So it's like, I think the performance is great. Like, Domingo's always great in anything, but I think it'll really served well. I did think it was a bit suspicious if the way he just like popped out of nowhere, and then ultimately those suspicions were proven to be, with good reason. But at first he just comes across like somebody who knows the story and is like, passing down wisdom for Yaya. Ultimately this is how he first hears about it, but then and then you hear, and then you realize, oh, what's really happening. And I'm like, that's a really interesting, this is what I referenced earlier before. It's just like to kind of piece through what Domingo's entire thing is. Like, he feels like, Candyman is this necessary evil that needs to be there because the pain of the community at large has not gone anywhere, and this is, I guess, the closest thing that can come for recompense. And maybe that's what DaCosta was trying to position this Candyman as, or maybe that I'm just high and I don't remember exactly what his thing was. Okay, great.
Well, to be fair, I think most people don't understand what he was going for. I'll tell you what I thought he was going for. I think in his mind was, Cabrini Green's been gentrified, right? Like,
yeah, it's dead.
There's no more of the people left, right?
Right.
And the culture. So to bring him back, he wouldn't be hurting us. He would be hurting
them. The
people that have taken Cabrini Green. It's kind of like taking
Revenge?
taking a hurricane and pointing it towards pointing it away,
right,
or pointing it towards someone with whom you got beef, like that, right? That's the way I saw it. But if I had to have another negative, yeah, it was not very clear as to entirely what he was trying to get at or what he was trying to
It all
do.
happened so quickly, and then it moves on to something
else. It happened
else.
very quick. That third act did feel a bit rushed. I will say that.
It didn't really need to, though, because the movie ends up being not that long.
No.
It ends kind of abruptly, too.
Mm. I like the abrupt end.
I like it, too, but it also made like, wait. And I was like, that really went by fast.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the feeling, but I agree, though. But what it went for, it's like, yeah, this is what we're here for.
Like at the very end, when you see Tony Todd's face and he's just like, spread my name, say what happened here, and then boom, Candyman. That worked for me. I was like, that's a great ending, right? But the third act as a whole felt a bit rushed, right? Especially when it came to our main character, Yaya's character.
Yeah.
Because he went from learning the truth to, like, the next time we see him, he's in the church with Domingo, right? And I felt like we needed a scene or two in between that with him to get to it felt, I don't know.
We just jumped to it.
Yeah. I needed a little bit more from him. But it also worked for me, that ending. So, yeah.
Well, with what happens, it's like, talk about social commentaries, but like basically as Yaya is transitioning into the Candyman, and Teyona Perez is trying to save him and everything, and then the cops come. I think Teyona maybe, hopefully, she thinks to the rescue. She calls for them. They barge in. And while Yaya is basically lying on the floor, his head on her lap, the cops just show up. They see him on the floor, and they shoot him dead.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and the scene is as shocking as it is enraging when you see it.
Yeah, this is where I think the bluntness got a little bit too much for me. Because then right after this, the cops are just like, either your little boyfriend over there, he's a murderer. Now you say he attacked us, you're free to go. But if you tell him what really happened, we'll say you were an accomplice too. It did get a little too cartoony with, mustache twirling.
Sure. But those things do happen.
They happen. I'll say this. The first part happens, right? Where
all the time.
Where like they bust in and then they open fire, and it's like, whoa, why are you opening fire? And now someone's dead, right? That to me, I was like, okay, it's blunt, but it happened and it's getting the point across. But then that second part where it's like, where you turn into a Bond villain as a cop, where it's a little bit like, I get it, okay, I get. That's the one part where I'm like, okay, it's a little too thick, even for me, who appreciates the bluntness. I know you're probably different.
No, I think it worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it worked for me, and I think it worked to facilitate the rage that was going on, because it's an epidemic in America. But that ending, oh my god, that ending just felt so satisfying, did it not?
Yes. Because that's when you actually, I think that's the first time you really see Candyman.
Yeah.
Like really see him in action. Because before, and we didn't really talk about this, I love the stuff they did with the mirrors and the way he would be like in the corners.
Yeah,
like you'd look by and he'd be
that
like,
was really effective. Yeah,
that stuff was effective, and I really liked that. That's why when people say like, oh man, it's not Tony Todd. Yeah, it's not Tony Todd, but it's going for something different, right?
And I appreciate that
because it's he's not just out in the open. Because Tony Todd was out in the open, like, what's up? Be my victim. Bask in my glory. I am eternal, like really up close and personal with him, whereas the Candyman for most of this film was it was behind mirrors and the shadows. It's very different, and you don't really get to that Tony Todd Candyman until the end of the film, until that scene where it's like, okay, this is old school Candyman, where he just comes out and like not even so much as a hello, just whoosh, 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 and just with the bees and everything. And the way that you see him morph into like different faces.
Yeah.
As he's walking along the car, and you see it in the reflection. Again, playing with the ideas of reflection still. And I loved it. I really loved it. And then of course, as you get to He finally returns, the Candyman, the original Candyman. Because the legend is now reborn, and it is Tony Todd himself. His booming voice, the bees and everything. Tell everyone. And then credits, all of that. All of that I think worked really well. I loved it. Yeah?
I agree. I thought it was great.
Yeah. For me, it worked. I mean, maybe I'll feel differently on a rewatch, and I'll go like, man, they did lay it on too thick, or I don't know, any other number of disagreements or negatives that I could point at it. But as for how I'm feeling right now, I really enjoyed it. I really did. I thought it was a worthy successor to the original Candyman. I think it took a lot of and what I really loved is, to me, for it to be a worthy successor to the original Candyman is, one, to take the themes and expand on them, which I think they did, and to understand that Candyman is not just a typical horror film. It's not a typical slasher. It tries to be a little bit more artsy than that, which they absolutely did here. So, yeah, it worked for me.
I agree 1,000%. Go watch it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, and we should also mention, I think it didn't make like 22 million?
Yeah, it made $22 million. It was a good opening weekend for the box office for this movie. But I think the bigger thing is that this is the first movie in the history of ever that a movie that was directed by a black woman debuted #1 at the box office.
That is insane. In movie history. How? That is insane to me. Again, that's one of those things where it pops up and you're like, yeah, like, for as much as we think we've progressed, there's always little facts like that pop up to remind you how much more we have to go. Yeah, how much more we haven't and how much more we have to go. Yeah, for sure. But I mean, congratulations to Nia DaCosta.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and call it a night. As a reminder, please check out To the Table. We're back for these next 2 months for Halloween. And the first one we kicked it off with was the original Candyman. I think it's a great companion piece to the episode you just listened to. We'll be back next week to talk about Shang-Chi, hopefully. Thank you all so much. Stay here in the spotlight, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.